Hello, my name is Elizabeth Capice, and I am a Strategic Account Manager for Parks Associates Executive Conferences and Custom Marketing Services. First, I want to thank our sponsors for supporting our event today. Your combined and individual support helps make our events possible. As you may know, Parks Associates is a woman-owned and trusted market research firm with an excellent reputation for our research and executive conferences. While 2020 is a year that we will certainly never forget, it remains our goal in 2021 to serve and support our sponsors through our year-long virtual conferences and custom marketing services. Our conferences offer a unique combination of industry expertise and extensive consumer research and analysis, ensuring sponsors visibility to the right audience of our senior executives throughout the year. Connections, the premier connected home conference, is celebrating its 25th year and hosting more than 1,300 senior executives from the smart home, security, connected health, energy, and home automation industries during sessions throughout the year. Our 12th annual Smart Energy Summit addresses the evolution of the customer utility market, the impact of COVID-19, and new opportunities to drive engagement in utility-sponsored programs and energy-efficient solutions. Parks Associates' 8th annual Connected Health Summit addresses opportunities for connected health solutions to empower consumers, caregivers, and providers to meet the growing demand, independent living, chronic care management, remote access, and wellness and fitness solutions. Our 4th annual Future of Video, OTT, Pay TV, and Digital Media brings together senior leaders to share insights on consumer adoption, churn, and spending on services, including the role of the connected CE in the growth of video viewing. If you are looking for new ways to engage with our audiences, increase your brand awareness, and network with our industry leaders, I would love to share with you on how to partner with Parks Associates to help provide your brand more visibility.
If you miss a live session, you can go back at any time to watch on demand. Go to Watch Replays and click on the session that you want to view. Have you created your own event agenda and swap card? Visit the Agenda and Watch Replay tabs to add sessions that interest you to your own event. You can go back to My Event to revisit any bookmarked sessions, sponsors, and items. We want to make sure that you're connecting with our industry-leading sponsors. You can interact with them by visiting the Booths and the Sponsor tab. You can also bookmark sponsors or add items to your event to view later. Sponsors have uploaded extra materials for attendees. Make sure to visit sponsors that interest you to chat with one of their team members or save documents for later. We have dedicated meeting slots set up for break times between sessions. Continue the discussion by requesting meetings from others in the Swap Card platform. Schedule a meeting with another attendee or a sponsor by visiting their page. The panelists and speakers will be addressing your questions live during the stream. During the stream, use the question tab to ask your questions early in the presentation. Go to the poll tab to answer polls that will be discussed during the live stream. If you need help navigating Swap Card, please reach out to our team by mentioning @Parks Associates in the chat box or by contacting one of our team members via our company page. Welcome to the 4th annual Future of Video, OTT, Pay TV, and Digital Media, a virtual series taking place across 2021. Consumers and their entertainment choices are the key drivers in the entertainment industry. As more video entertainment options become available, bringing more freedom of choice, consumer preferences will determine their usage patterns and the size and content of their portfolios. Market conditions have also changed the nature of competition in video services. Consumers are willing to carry multiple video accounts to get the content they want, so in many instances, a service is desired based on how it complements other services in the market. At the 4th Annual Future of Video, we are bringing together industry leaders to share insights on new trends in the video and connected entertainment industries. Our speakers will present insights on consumer behaviors and the challenges for the video industry in meeting these expectations. Parks Associates analysts will present in-depth consumer and industry research on OTT services, the value of content, and best strategies for building successful video services for today's connected consumers. We hope you can join us for these upcoming sessions or watch replays of any past sessions. On March 31st, join us for Evolution of vMVPDs, Finding Success. On May 5th, we will dive into Beyond the Theater, New Windowing Strategies. We have 2 sessions on June 9th covering retention and churn in OTT and data and decision-making in video services. On July 28th, join us for the impact of connected devices on the video experience. On October 6th, impact of 5G on consumer entertainment. Finally, join us for our 2-day conference on December 14th and 15th for the shift to hybrid business models, the age of video aggregation, capturing the consumer, video engagement and strategies, and OTT bundling partnerships. Thank you for attending Future of Video, OTT, Pay TV, and Digital Media.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for today's session in the Parks Associates Future of Video series, Evolution of vMVPDs, Finding Success. We'd like to thank our sponsors today, Everise, Delta Tray, Bitmovin, and Metrological, and Brightcove. Just to briefly preview what we have in store for the year, going virtual has allowed us to break Future of Video up into a steady stream of relevant content throughout the course of the year. And so, as you can see, we have a lot of great topics on the horizon. And our next event on May 5th, where the topic will be Beyond Theater, New Windowing Strategies. We hope you can join us for that one, and again throughout the year. To give you a brief overview of today, I'll kick off with my insight and view of the market. Shane Cannon from Vidgo will speak during our visionary insight of the program. My colleague Steve Nason will lead our executive Q&A portion with Friendly TV's Michael McLean. And from there, we'll get into a great panel discussion with Carolyn Fedetta from Philo, Michael Ribeiro from Viacom CBS, Greg Riker from Metrological, and Nick Wilson from TiVo. From there, we'll do an audience Q&A with the speakers, and then we'll invite the audience and our speakers to participate in our Zoom Rooms networking discussion on the topic of how vMVPDs will evolve to better serve cord cutters. So before we begin, I'd like to encourage our audience to remember they can submit their Q&A questions at any time during today's program through Swapcard. So to kick things off, let's look at the state of the market. By way of introduction, I'm Paul Erickson. I'm a senior analyst with Parks Associates within the entertainment team, and I cover consumer electronics, technologies, devices, and services. And I've been in the technology arena for over 20 years, 16 as an analyst, covering both the consumer and service provider ends of the spectrum. And I'm happy to now be at Parks Associates and here today for a topic I find intriguing because it's a mix of both the consumer and pay TV universes that I know so well. And that is vMVPDs and their universe, the market for internet-delivered pay TV services. Very quickly, here's how we see the entertainment video ecosystem fitting together at Parks Associates. And for those in our audience unaccustomed to the term, vMVPDs, it's easy to get wrong, are virtual multi-channel video programming distributors. Traditional pay TV operators were MVPDs, multi-channel video programming distributors, and vMVPDs are the internet version of that. And so vMVPDs are part of the overall OTT landscape, OTT being over-the-top streaming video services. What is the state of vMVPDs today? Let's contrast them to the traditional pay TV market. Now, subscribership for vMVPDs is slowly but steadily growing, and they are taking increasing subscriber share of the U.S. pay TV market. Now, by Parks Associates forecasts, by 2023, vMVPD subscribership will be greater than that of satellite and telco IPTV combined, and will be second only to cable, reaching 30% of U.S. pay TV by 2024. Thanks to underlying trends in the market and consumer adoption of OTT services, the time is ripe for the vMVPD proposition. Not surprisingly, there are many parties vying for this pie. Now, the market is both crowded and competitive, with first mover Sling TV and fellow top three competitors, YouTube TV and Hulu with Live TV, now going head-to-head with each other and several aggressive competitors, each with their own unique proposition. While the big three have certain big advantages to rely on, Sling with first mover advantage and international content, YouTube TV with the Google ecosystem, and Hulu with the Disney ecosystem, the other players do not have these same level of advantages, and thus forced to rely on aggression, innovation, and creativity to make their fortunes in this space. So it's these other players you want to pay attention to, and you want to pay attention today because we have three of them here: Vidgo, Friendly TV, and Philo. Now, clearly, the fact that vMVPDs are taking increasing share of pay TV, even as traditional pay TV methods decline, is helping attract this level of competition. Let's take a look at why that's happening. The biggest reason why people switch from traditional pay TV to vMVPDs, it's price. Over half of switchers said traditional services were just too expensive. 29% of current pay TV subscribers said they're unhappy with the price and value. Also, U.S. broadband households spent an average of $16 per month on OTT services in early 2020, which is double what they spent only 2 years ago. OTT adoption is therefore deepening, and vMVPDs are in a unique OTT-based position to try and address this pay TV opportunity. Let's look at these top 5 reasons for switching to a vMVPD above. 2 of those 5 relate to price, and 2 relate to content. Now, price is a factor in driving subscriber defections from pay TV, but content has a significant role as well. This is important when we consider that vMVPD pricing is increasing. And we shouldn't forget number 2. Consumers were swayed by features and capabilities of an online service that weren't available otherwise. So it's important to keep in mind the possibilities that are presented by a user base comprised of connected devices. The big takeaway here, though, is that price and content are the 2 biggest decision-making vectors driving consumers switching to vMVPDs from pay TV. To illustrate some of this, let's take a look at how the price advantage is decreasing, though. As we see here across this sample of vMVPDs, pricing has grown considerably since launch. Now, all players are subject to the rising cost of content, everyone. Price is a decreasing advantage, but let's look to see if we can correlate that content is an alternative advantage to employ. Let's look at OTT overall, which vMVPDs are a portion of, to cross-reference. So in these top 5 factors driving OTT subscriptions, 4 of these top 5 involve price or content, similar to the vMVPD specific reasons on the preceding slide. This reinforces that vMVPD subscribership is heavily dependent on the buckets of price and content. Now, with average vMVPD subscription prices rising due to the rising cost of content, the implication here is that content is a substantive complement to price, if vMVPDs are looking for additional factors to differentiate to drive subscribership. Now, this need to differentiate and drive subscribership is relevant because vMVPD service adoption is growing, but as with any relatively new market, there remain challenges to solve. Subscriber retention is one of those challenges, and it needs to be addressed by the market today. Subscription lengths are shorter than typical for pay TV, and just shorter than the industry would desire. And if we look at Parks Associates research from late last year, hence you see legacy AT&T and T-Mobile services on there, we see that average subscription lengths average between a year and a year and a quarter for vMVPDs. Much of this is just due to things that are inherent to vMVPDs. They're more expensive than standalone OTT services, they have more content and features compared to other services, and they don't have contracts, which makes them easy to cancel. Altogether, these all make vMVPDs prone to high churn. So as the vMVPD category is in crucial years to build business momentum, this places high importance on subscriber retention. And part of that issue there is illustrated in the churn rate, which we calculate as the subscribers that reported canceling a service in the prior 12 months as a % of the current subscriber base. We can see here that across OTT, the rate is 38% compared to 49% for vMVPDs. OTT services in general have higher churn rates than traditional pay TV, but churn rates for vMVPDs are higher still. Why is that? Well, vMVPDs have similar offerings to one another, higher price points than other OTT services, and no contracts. So altogether, these contribute to higher cancellation rates. And price compared to perceived value is a big OTT churn determinant, and this is one area where vMVPDs face challenges given the rising prices that I illustrated earlier. So very quickly, let's run down some of the top 5 reasons that people churn from OTT according to Parks research. It's the need to cut household expenses, they finish watching a show that they like, the promotional price or offer ended, you couldn't find good programs to watch, or the service raised its price. Now, what you can take away from that is that all of those top 5 reasons fall within the buckets of either price or content. So what are effective ways to retain customers? Well, let's look at the top 5 retention measures that we found in our research. Putting a subscription on hold, lowering the price with fewer programs, holding to the original subscription price, a free upgrade to a higher tier, and a tie between better customer support and a $1 per month discount. Now, these are the methods that work best for OTT overall, according to Parks survey research. This helps set the stage for our panel, as the question is, are these also applicable to vMVPDs specifically? Our panel can touch on that in a few minutes, and perhaps get into ways that vMVPDs can differentiate themselves from legacy pay TV and each other, make themselves more sticky with subscribers, and also raise retention in ways that are unique to their capabilities as online pay TV services. So very briefly, the vMVPD market is steadily growing and becoming a significant part of the pay TV landscape. Consumers are choosing vMVPDs and turning away from vMVPDs for similar reasons, price and content. And these services face challenges when it comes to churn and retention, but if they can manage these challenges successfully, there's still a considerable potential left to be tapped within the pay TV landscape. So with that, I'm happy to present, having set the stage with that overview of the industry, I'm happy to present for the visionary insight portion of today's program, Shane Cannon. And so Shane is VIDGO's president and co-founder. And during his time at VIDGO, Shane has helped the company secure its content rights portfolio, its technology stack, its sales and marketing agreements with its strategic partners. And he's also been involved in securing capital, having raised $10 million for the company through angel investors. Now, additionally, in Shane's career, he has the DTC go-to-market experience of founding 3 startup companies that acquired over 200,000 customers, generating $2.5 million in additional revenue for consumer brands via a direct-to-consumer model. So before we hand it to Shane, I'd like to encourage our audience to send your Q&A questions for Shane via swap card, and we'll try to address them. With that, we turn it over to you, Shane. We're going to go to video.
Let's see. How about now? You got my audio coming too?
Hi, Shane. Glad to have you with us.
Thanks for having me. Nice to see you and appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
I'd like to start off and share a deck that I prepared to share what I see as the state of the market, some of the market trends we're seeing in the market in general, and then what VIDGO is experiencing as well. I think it's clear the love of streaming is real. That's been exacerbated by the pandemic. People have had time to use new services, and frankly, the consumers are overloaded with choices now, and I think that's something we could talk to today. So let me start with my presentation, and we'll do some questions at the end, as you suggested. Does that sound good, Paul?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. So let me get my deck here. Can everyone see the future cable screen? Okay, great. So as Paul alluded to with his statistics, there's a clear trend with cord cutting, cord shifting is probably a more appropriate term. People are keeping a pay TV service and experimenting with new services. We're clearly seeing that. We had an interesting move we made in the fall. We decided to get rid of the free trial and go to a pay model only and get rid of the free trial. We saw a lot of success with that. There's a lot of cord shifting and jumping, and we just wanted to make customers spend some time with our product rather than a quick in and out. And we found a lot of success there, but it's very clear that there's this shift underway. Streaming is becoming the primary form of video consumption. There's no doubt about that. The success of some of these skinny bundles we're seeing with Disney and Peacock and Paramount and others exacerbating this shift. So I'd like to talk about that a little more as far as how important this moment is, and I think this alludes to a shift of the traditional cable and satellite bundle. I also think we're seeing, with the deal, I guess a week ago, the NFL rights that were renewed, we're going to see an acceleration of that, as well as content, and the bundles are starting to break up. So we've seen a lot of success with Disney, obviously, probably the most successful of everyone. I think 80 million plus taking on their direct-to-consumer app. And I think this is just the precursor of shifting away from satellite and cable to a smaller price bundle, and the customer picking their own lineups of content that they're used to watching. Interesting story as well as the deal just recently with Comcast and the Disney bundle. Maybe we can talk about that during the Q&A, because that's something important as well. I think that's cable recognizing that this shift is inevitable. So as I discussed, the Disney Plus, the ESPN Plus, the Peacock, Discovery, and the Paramount Plus bundles are all something to watch. Customers can now get services for $5 to $10 a month range, and I consider this a watershed moment for that shift. Clear success as far as the numbers go, over 120 million plus that have subscribed to these new skinny bundles. Very material when you compare that to the amount of pay TV homes in the US. This is accelerating the shift. I think we'll see this pick up steam as the year or two go on. Another interesting trend we're seeing is the shift in movie viewing habits. With the pandemic, obviously theaters were shut down. People consume more video at home, and movies specifically. I think we'll see this trend continue and accelerate. Obviously AT&T with their move with releasing first run titles earlier and not into theaters is something to keep note of and to watch. But some interesting stats here as far as the fall and the decline in going to the movie theaters to consume premium movies. I think we'll see a shift where you're able to consume and purchase premium movies at home and through your virtual streaming providers. So something to keep an eye on, the number of tickets and the decline in movies. I think we can all agree the future of streaming is bright. The growth is there, as you saw the numbers from Paul. The growth will only continue, again, accelerated by what's happened the last year with so many people staying at home and becoming more comfortable with the technology experiencing with streaming. I think it's becoming more and more the norm and the primary form of video consumption. We can thank Netflix and others for that. Hulu has had wild success as well, obviously. But we see 61% of consumers at a younger demographic see streaming as the only and primary way to consume video. I think that will continue. And having children that age myself, I've seen that trend firsthand. Another notable trend is the 35 to 50 age demographic and 50 plus are gravitating more and more towards streaming. They're getting more comfortable with it. It is now becoming a primary method of them to watch it and consume live video. Last stat I'd share is the 70% of millennials and Gen Z now only stream movies. They do not go to movie theaters, and they just do it online or watch it on their laptops. Clear and obvious trend. So I'd like to shift gears a little bit and tell you a little more about what we're seeing with video ourselves. We've been in the market with our English lineup a little over a year, December when we launched, and be happy to share some trends we're seeing and give you a little more background on video itself. So we try and position ourselves as the most affordable and comprehensive skinny bundle. On purpose, we do not have extra add-on packages or feature benefits for an extra price. We believe in simplified pricing and that the consumers demand that simplicity. We also believe we have the most comprehensive sports package in our basic lineup without any extra fees required. We've decided to focus heavily on local channels and now have carriage for all 210 markets for both ABC and Fox. Another differentiator for Vidgo is we've decided to focus in our first adoption with social TV and hosting watch parties, and we've seen a lot of success around that feature. The last and perhaps most important is we believe in the diversity of content and carrying multicultural content. We've added a number of channels as of late that you can see from our lineup. So from a product offering, we focus on a national offer. As I mentioned, we have ABC and Fox in all 210 DMAs. Our vision is to be able to watch on any device anywhere and be device agnostic. We also support digital ad insertion technologies and are monetizing ads with our partners, FreeWill. And we continue to see adoption of the social TV feature and the watch parties, and that's something we learned from and continue to see more and more adjustments with how to use that feature and which are the most important. We have plans to roll out with video on demand in the next 60 days. We're well down the path with our development and have some exciting video on demand offers we'll be rolling out to the market in the next 60 days. So from those of you that aren't familiar from a content perspective, we have two packages today. We have an English bundle of 95 plus channels for $55 a month. And we have a Latino package of approximately 30 channels for $25 a month. Our focus in genre of content, again, around sports, locals, and news. Something that's unique about video, many of you may know, is we have gone to market with a prepaid strategy targeting the unbanked customers that prefer to pay in cash. That's our niche, and our focus is to bring these customers to market that don't have a credit or debit card and only pay in cash. It's a very large market. We have a good amount of distribution, over 35,000 points of sale around the country, where customers can go in and pay in cash for their streaming service, just like they do for their cell phone bill and other products. A little bit more about the unbanked market itself. The addressable market, there's over 70 million plus that we're targeting. These are people that have prepaid wireless contracts, pay in cash, and go to these locations around the country to refill their bill each month. From some Federal Reserve stats, there's over 55 million that are considered underserved or underbanked, according to our government. And we're very comfortable with the number of 50 million plus that are considered cord cutters from this market. And then from the market itself, we're seeing growth of close to 2 million potential subs per quarter, split between the virtual MVPD space. So we've experienced some wild growth the past few months. We took in some new investment at the end of the year and had some capital to go to market and aggress our marketing spend. We experienced over 700% quarterly growth the past few months and continue to see success with our model. Some other unique stats are the amount of engagement, how often people are using and watching the VidGo product. We have over 30,000 unique logins every single day. They use VidGo on either mobile or an OTT device at home. Over 1.5 million unique logins per month. These customers are watching a little over 2 hours a day with average hourly watch time. And that brings us over 150 plus minutes of ad revenue per month per subscriber on average. One thing, as I mentioned earlier, is we pride ourselves on bringing a diverse audience to market. Many of our subscribers are focused on sports and news. They're also very multicultural. We skew very high African American and Latino, and we think that growth will only expand as we continue to add more content that targets those niches. We have a wide range of age and income on our platform. 35 to 50 is our sweet spot as far as the average user and profile of a VidGo customer. We skew a little heavier male than female. That's to be expected with the amount of sports content that we have. 90% of our viewers are happening at home on the big screen TV as well. You may be aware of our strategic partners, Fox and Disney, Viacom, A&E, ABC, Discovery, ESPN, and NFL Network are some of the key partners. We've also done a lot of relationships with what I'll call long tail content that bring in meaningful subscriptions like a Hallmark channel or an ISP. So to summarize what we're seeing, premium content and live sports are driving subscriptions. We saw that in the fall as the pandemic started to subside. We came back with live sports. We saw a big spike with football, as you would expect. Sports and news and locals continue to be our primary focus, and we think that's the winning strategy to go to market with. We are seeing seasonal churn as as sports or football season ends, that's to be expected, and I think we'll see more of that. Consumers, I guess my biggest takeaway from this and what I would share is consumers are bombarded with choices. There's an overwhelming amount of choices out there, and they're trying to solve the puzzle, and it can be exhausting to figure it out. And there's some great sites out there, My Bundle TV and others that help solve some of those puzzles for the consumer. But the aggregation of services is needed and wanted. And I think with all these free choices out there, customers are going to gravitate towards an aggregator of content like Vidgo. Last thing of note is we're experiencing rapid growth, and we've expanded our channel lineup to over 95 channels in our basic package. So, Paul, I can turn it over to you and grab a breath here, drink water.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Shane, for joining us today and giving us a view of the market from the Vidgo perspective. And it's good to see that the move from free trials to full pay has gone so successfully. We do have a couple of audience questions here if you'd like to tackle one. So we have one question here. Can you share more about the watch parties and social viewing activities and how to keep people engaged? Does it grow organically, or how does that work?
It definitely drives engagement. We've had a couple successful events. One of them was the NFL draft last year. We had a very successful watch party with some NFL celebrities, and it's very engaging and exciting for fans to be able to chat with a football star or a professional athlete. Or we found high engagement when we did the watch party. We also did it with 90 Day Fiance and had some of the members of 90 Day Fiance on and engage with customers. So I think what I would share is engagement is easy when you have celebrities involved or the stars, and there's no better way than a chat to involve and feel that the customer's a part of something and ask a question they never get the chance to. So streaming allows that audience, to reach hundreds of millions potentially in an instant. And I think social TV is here to stay, and we're still learning and fine tuning its best usage. We do get some complaints that it can be loud and overwhelming, and we have a feature you just rotate your mobile device and it hides the chat. But there's things to be learned there.
Yes, and it's definitely in an age where we have so many connected devices around us and so many ways of communicating and so many screens. I think the days are still early to tap all that potential when it comes to social viewing. We've got another question here. How do you position Vidgo as you go to market? As a cable replacement or as an add-on? Do you see standalone OTT services such as Netflix and so on as complements, competitors, or both?
I'll answer the latter first. I think Netflix and Hulu and these others are complements. I don't see that as competition at all. With our focus on live sports and news and local channels, that Netflix and traditional Hulu is not a competitor there. So I think we coexist well. I think the pandemic has seen the amount of paid subscription apps jump to 4 or 5 per device from 2 or 3 from a year or two ago. So I think the trend is real to aggregate towards more of these skinnier bundles. Obviously, there's been a lot of success with Friendly TV. I read the prep, they did over 400,000 customers. That's incredible. I think the demand for skinny bundle niche apps like that is there. And Philo is another great example who's on here. Very, very successful model. The value prop is clear. For $20, you get all the content minus sports. So I think we'll see more of that.
Great. I've got a question, and I think that it's probably somewhere out there in the audience as well, in the collective mind. The big news in the market over the past few days has been, it's been impossible to avoid it, has been T-Mobile's decision to shut down its T-Vision service and do a strategic tie-up with Google and offer YouTube TV and Philo to its customers. What do you think? What are your thoughts on this, and what does it say about going from old to new, traditional pay TV from service providers to the new era? What are your thoughts on this?
That caught a lot of us, I think, by surprise. With as good a marketing company as T-Mobile is, to do that quick of a pivot, 90 days or whatever was surprising. I guess my personal take is they picked the wrong horse. I think their layer 3 deal and their MVPD or whoever was powering it, they made 2 mistakes there, and it probably just became a cost issue where they were just sunk 300 or 400 million and decide to pivot, move on. I do think strategically partnering with the Google, YouTube TV, and Philo is smart. It eliminates risk for them. They're known brands, established platforms, good leadership. Strategically, it makes a lot of sense. I think they're giving up a lot from an advertising perspective with their scale for not doing that. But strategically, it's a good move on their part. Just surprising.
Yeah, so surprising to me as well, just the speed and abruptness of the pivot, or decisiveness of the pivot, however you want to portray that. But they've made a very definitive move, so it's definitely something to be watching. Another question from the audience: how much of your engagement comes from linear viewership versus VOD?
Good question. So our VOD is not live yet. We have some playback and look back features, but the vast majority is live linear. We're gravitating towards VOD. We're excited to roll that out. But to this point, it's all linear in our focus, and we hang our hat around live linear programming. We think that's our biggest strength. And as far as the VOD go, we think it's important to just make content discoverable. We think VOD can be a replacement for DVR in most cases, and we believe we'll prove that.
Okay, and we've got the questions are getting livelier here. We've got one. Variety VIP reported that customers are transitioning to sports recaps over actual sports coverage. What is your plan to handle this shift in the market, and are you waiting for your partners to fill that gap?
Good question. The love of live sports is not going away. I think we saw during the pandemic, I remember how successful the ESPN, the Michael Jordan, The Last Dance, right? The documentary, and how hungry people are for sports content. That just solidified to me how important that is, and that will never go away. I do think, the sports betting and some of the trends we're seeing with Fubo and others starting to dabble in other genres make a lot of sense. I think it's wise. I think sports is best served on multiple devices, and sometimes you're going to need to watch it on your mobile, but most times you'll be on the big screen at home. And I think we'll see more of these relationships, whether it's sports betting or maybe even esports. We're going to see more of that trend. And personally, with VidGo, we're going to probably experiment with our own channel, and we don't want to get into the cost of running our own channel, but there's a partnership or two we're considering to have our own unique sports channel.
Okay, and I have maybe here's a perfect positioning opportunity question here. How do you compete with other vMVPDs such as Sling with a lower price range, and let's say YouTube TV, which is a certain type of experience and channel bundles? Like, what is your positioning relative to the market, would you say?
I think everyone has to carve their own lineup and niche there. The amount of sports content we carry is far more than any of our competitors. I think Sling has done a good job of the skinny bundle concept. Obviously, they don't have local channels in most cases, or they have you get an off-air antenna. I see that as a weakness. I think local channels are essential. YouTube TV, I think, was mentioned, very successful bundle, $65 price point. We're approaching 95 channels. I'll have to do a side-by-side comparison, but I still believe we have a more comprehensive bundle than they do at our price point. And we made a strategic decision to leave out a couple networks to keep our price down. So there's 2 or 3 networks we don't have: an NBC, a Turner, an AMC, and that helps keep us typically $10 to $15 lower than our competition.
Okay, I have, before I go to our next question, I think the role of content, and especially the role of differentiated content, and for a gradually, well, actually progressively more multilingual audience is an interesting thing to examine. And we have a question here speaking to that, where it asks, can you speak to your engagement for your English versus Spanish product offering, or Espanol?
Yeah, we started with Spanish, got our feet wet, proof of concept with Latino content. We're still a big believer in it. Our first year was getting the product ready and tested at what I'll call the beta phase with Latino programming. We had good run, and some of our partners like beIN Sports and others, we know the demand for Latino content is not going away. What we've seen is an appetite for a bilingual package, and I think you'll see more of that, of both English and Spanish in our consumers. And Obviously, with second generation, third generation Latino households, that's the norm, and they're going to want both. And so I think you'll see our pricing reflect that and package that does that.
Okay, thank you. And I've got another question here. How much of a role does personalization play in your user experience?
It's critical. It's important. Frankly, I don't think we're there yet from our product where I'd like it to be. I'd argue it's essential and needed. We have a favorites menu, and we're trying to organize content by genre that I think has helped a lot. And we have 4 categories on our menus. We're going to add a 5th one with news, with how much news content we've picked up as of late. But just keeping it simple and discoverable for users is critical. And I think personalization is ultra important. With our social TV and our watch parties, you have the ability to, share GIFs and memes and do polls, and I think you're going to see more of that. And there's a segment of the market that enjoys that personalization and that customization as you're consuming live or in future cases on-demand content.
Yeah, and I'll agree there. I mean, personalization is going to be very important, especially as we find ways to kind of funnel down the overwhelming choice of content that people have available to them today. There's a question here that speaks to the changing nature of media and advertising, especially as we go from old-fashioned linear content to streaming and OTT. And that question is, can you share more on advertising challenges in general and improving to advertisers about your viewership, about the value of your viewership?
Well, let me just say advertising is critical and essential, and frankly, that's the way we're going to make money in this business, and most of our peers would agree. You're not going to make money in your subscription revenue, or in some cases you're subsidizing. The opportunity to monetize ads is there, and we're seeing, especially on like a connected TV, much higher CPMs, and we're going to try and do more of that. I think our partners FreeWheel has done an incredible job helping us monetize ads and build a foundation to drive revenues. I was impressed with some of the numbers I saw from, I think it was Fubo's fourth quarter numbers. There was 30 million or so in advertising revenue. That's very material for just being around a couple of years, and that's a telling sign that how much money can be made in this space when you have half a million subscribers.
Right. We've got a bit more specific questions here. You can see if you want to tackle them. Does Vidgo do dynamic ad insertion, or are the linear ads kept the same from the broadcasters and so on? If so, what type of CPMs are you seeing?
That's a good question. We do dynamic ad insertion with our partnership with FreeWheel. We're getting to the point where hopefully we'll be at where half our ads are done that way. Some ads are passed through, and our goal is to have all of our 95 plus channels have the digital ad insertion live and monetizing ads. But the reality is today we probably have 30% of our channels where we're doing that. So we're just getting started. But there's CPMs you asked about, $10 to $15 CPMs currently as an average. But as I alluded to on the smart TVs, the connected TVs, excuse me, we see a higher CPM.
Okay.
And then I would add with sports and news and locals, there's definitely higher CPMs there to be had than the traditional national cable channel.
Okay. Let's change directions here, and we look at audience demographics. And the audience demographics and the kind of the changing makeup of the type of devices they use to consume video on. How does the breadth of demographics we're seeing migrate to OTT influence how providers approach subscriber hardware support and onboarding?
That's a loaded question there.
Yeah, it seems like it.
There's, I guess, the visibility we have to who our end users are and what devices they're consuming content on, which channels they're watching, and how often give us the opportunity to do a very targeted advertising and profile our customers. And within the household, I would argue, we have the ability to see, what mom and dad are watching versus what the kids are watching and serve up ads to the children versus the parents. So I think that's where the excitement is, and that's where the future is, and that's where you're going to get higher CPMs because of the targeted ads that we can do. And we know that in real time because of our analytics and what shows people are watching and what devices and what days of the week, what time of day they watch, and you can serve up ads, and we're going to get higher CPMs in the evening versus in the morning. It's a fact. But we have the tools and the technology with this platform to monetize ads, and it's how we're going to be successful and make more money.
Okay, and I've got one last audience question here before I get into a question I just had on my own. And this is actually just very content specific. Are there any plans by VidGo to add the Sinclair and Comcast RSNs?
Good question. Yes, there's interest. We've had discussions with pretty much everyone from the RSNs. I'd say it's of interest. Optimistic, no timetable. If we can make the cost and the price structure work, we would be happy to carry the RSNs.
I've got one last question from my end, and then we'll let you get a sip of water and catch your breath here. Mm-hmm. You mentioned some of the differences in the audience earlier and the demographics, and I was curious, any thoughts on how you approach generational differences in vMVPD customers? So, for example, I think most especially millennials versus Gen Z. Are there any particular thoughts you have on should you approach them differently, or is their nature of consumption different, or what are your thoughts?
I think getting Gen Z engaged is the biggest challenge our industry faces. I mean, they're so used to free content. I have 2 kids in that category, and part of the reason I got into the streaming business 5+ years ago is I could offer them free satellite and free TV, and they were watching YouTube and Netflix. And it was very telling 5 years ago this was the direction we were headed, and I ran towards streaming away from satellite. I think we're going to see more of that, and it's a big challenge for our space to overcome, is how to get Gen Z to pay for content. Everything's free, and the success of AVOD content is probably widening that gap. But that comes back to our premise of live sports and locals and news as the differentiator. And then you go the long tail content route. There's certain content you're not going to get on those free platforms, and that's probably the best way we get to Gen Z.
Right. I agree. Trying to get over their taste for free content is going to be an ongoing challenge. Well, Shane, I'd like to thank you again for being with us, and I hope that you'll join us later in our networking session, and I look forward to chatting with you again later. So,
thank you, Paul. Pleasure. Thank you.
And now, everyone, there's going to be a brief transition, and then my colleague Steve Nason is going to be here with our executive spotlight with Friendly TV. This research can be found in my new report, Growth and Challenges for vMVPDs. Subscriber losses in traditional pay TV continue while the vMVPD category continues to grow, thanks to consumer price sensitivity and preference for flexibility on the types of devices they can watch on. The absence of live sports and live performances during the COVID-19 pandemic created challenges for vMVPDs. And successful services like Hulu plus Live TV and YouTube TV have been able to push advantages in pricing, promotion, content, and platform flexibility to drive growth. Virtual MVPDs, services that provide online subscriptions to bundles of live linear channels, have become a force in the US pay TV marketplace. Each is taking a differing approach to the market and experiencing unique results. This new industry report examines the growth of this sector of the pay TV market, the strategies and outlook for major market players, and the challenges that lie ahead for vMVPDs and the pay TV market as a whole. You can download a table of contents today or purchase this report on the Parks Associates website, www.parksassociates.com. For more information on growth and challenges for vMVPDs, contact sales@parksassociates.com.
Join Parks Associates for its 4th annual Future of Video, OTT, Pay TV, and Digital Media, a virtual event series taking place across 2021. Our latest consumer data shows 60% of pay TV subscribers are interested in streaming movies and TV shows from an online video service as part of their subscription.
Overall, we leverage our data-driven marketing to double down on performance tactics that are working and to continue to optimize every part of the funnel to ensure we are maximizing overall performance.
Market conditions have also changed the nature of competition in video services.
How do we compete with the trends in the streaming world? And my answer is, don't try to compete.
Consumers are willing to carry multiple video accounts to get the content they want. So in many instances, a service is desired based on how it complements other services in the market.
It'll be interesting to see if anyone can challenge the major device makers, sort of like the current device makers challenge the set-top box.
At the 4th annual Future of Video, we are bringing together industry leaders to share insights on new trends in the video and connected entertainment industries.
The need for the data harness and the way we use data to create those experiences is going to continue to be exponentially important.
We hope you can join us for these upcoming sessions or watch replays of any past sessions.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Capice, and I am a Strategic Account Manager for Parks Associates Executive Conferences and Custom Marketing Services. First, I want to thank our sponsors for supporting our event today. Your combined and individual support helps make our events possible. As you may know, Parks Associates is a woman-owned and trusted market research firm with an excellent reputation for our research and executive conferences. While 2020 is a year that we will certainly never forget, it remains our goal in 2021 to serve and support our sponsors through our year-long virtual conferences and custom marketing services. Our conferences offer a unique combination of industry expertise and extensive consumer research and analysis, ensuring sponsors visibility to the right audience of our senior executives throughout the year. Connections, the premier connected home conference, is celebrating its 25th year and hosting more than 1,300 senior executives from the smart home, security, connected health, energy, and home automation industries during sessions throughout the year. Our 12th annual Smart Energy Summit addresses the evolution of the customer utility market, the impact of COVID-19, and new opportunities to drive engagement in utility-sponsored programs and energy-efficient solutions. Parks Associates' 8th annual Connected Health Summit addresses opportunities for connected health solutions to empower consumers, caregivers, and providers to meet the growing demand, independent living, chronic care management, remote access, and wellness and fitness solutions. Our 4th annual Future of Video, OTT, Pay TV, and Digital Media brings together senior leaders to share insights on consumer adoption, churn, and spending on services, including the role of the connected CE in the growth of video viewing. If you are looking for new ways to engage with our audiences, increase your brand awareness, and network with our industry leaders, I would love to share with you on how to partner with Parks Associates to help provide your brand more visibility.
Ready for our next session as part of our vMVPD discussion today. I am Steve Nason, Research Director at Parks Associates, oversee our entertainment research. Here at Parks Associates, we cover video services, OTT and Pay TV, cover the mobile and broadband services market, as well as connected consumer electronics space, gaming, and any other parts of the connected entertainment home.
and I am really thrilled to be moderating this session. It's an executive spotlight. Today, we're going to have a fireside chat over the next 30 minutes or so with our very special guest, and that is Michael McLean, co-founder and CFO at Friendly TV. Before we turn it over to Michael and start our discussion, I just want to give you a little background on Michael. Michael is the co-founder, as I said, and CFO of Friendly TV. He and the Friendly TV team, as we'll kind of get into during our discussion today, saw a gap in the market in the pay TV universe that could fit with family-friendly content at an affordable price, and it seems to be really resonating with consumers. Friendly TV recently announced some pretty impressive and significant subscriber growth rates and numbers, and we'll talk to Michael more about that, about what's driving that. And even probably more impressively, Friendly TV announced that they're now profitable, which is a rarity in today's OTT space. So we'll talk more to Michael about that. As well, Michael has over 15 years experience in strategic and operational finance roles, including a previous stint at Sling TV. So Dish Network. So we'll talk a little bit more with Michael possibly about that and some of the key takeaways he had at his time at Dish on the traditional side. Michael holds both a bachelor's and his master's degrees from the University of Denver. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Michael McLean, co-founder and CFO of Friendly TV. Michael, how are we doing this morning? I guess it's still morning where you are, about another 15 minutes. So how are we doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on virtually.
Absolutely. Yeah, too bad we can't be meeting in person, but this is the next best thing. And I want to remind everyone, as we did during Shane's session, please put any questions into the questions tab, and we'll get to many of those as possible with Michael and weave them in to our discussion. So Michael, before we get into some specifics about Friendly, the vMVPD market, can you just talk to the folks here who are maybe not familiar with Friendly TV, more about your company and also your role there, and anything else about your background you wanted to share?
Yeah, so Friendly TV, we're 15 live channels of content. We also have on-demand DVR, look back, and start over capabilities. We currently offer 6 total plans. Really, we have 3 monthly plans that are broken down by the tiering structure of the basic, classic, and premium. Those are kind of differentiated by number of streams. Our basic tier is SD, and then as you classic and premium are both HD and have expanded DVR capabilities with those plans. We're available on all your major devices today. Roku, Amazon, Apple TV, iOS, Android. We recently announced we're available on Android TV as well, which we're excited about. And as you mentioned briefly, we have seen some really strong subscriber growth. We ended December of 2020 with over 440,000 subscribers, and we launched in October of 2019. So some rapid growth there that we're very excited about and fortunate to have seen, and we're also profitable, as you mentioned. As I said, I'm one of 4 co-founders of the company, and I'm the CFO.
Great. Appreciate that overview. So let's dive into our discussion here. I like to start a little more macro, talking about the vMVPD space in general. Can you kind of describe from your perspective how you kind of see it? We here at Parks Associates, as Paul kind of talked about previously, we kind of position vMVPDs. They're kind of in between the sweet spot of a traditional pay TV service, obviously following similar business models, but obviously they're delivered, services delivered online, so they are OTT services, right, by nature. They kind of fit in that sweet spot. How do you kind of see vMVPDs? What trends are kind of driving the service space? And how does Friendly TV kind of fit in that ecosystem?
Yeah, so clearly there's been a lot of activity and movement within the space and ecosystem. I mean, as Paul was mentioning in his comments earlier, and I think Shane touched on as well, right? There's a lot going on. People are moving away from their traditional MVPDs and cutting the cord as broadband capacity and technology such as 5G continues to grow and becomes more available and more of a choice. There's more choice there. The trend towards accessibility of virtual MVPDs and OTT wasn't there maybe 5 to 10 years ago. So I think that's driving things. And I think we're really kind of at this inflection point now where people are easily able to access virtual MVPDs and apps on devices such as smart TVs that they weren't, able to, historically speaking. I also think the breakdown in demographic and what's available where is interesting that you guys talked about earlier. So I think that's helping drive the growth. We think we play right into that sweet spot as far as Friendly TV goes. But by giving people some of the functionality and comfort they'd seen with traditional, with a traditional MVPD, but also providing them access on over the top, an over top method, means. So, you'll notice if you play with Friendly, like our guide is traditional, a lot of the functionality is simple and straightforward, and it just lends itself to ease of use for our customer base. So, like I mentioned, we wanted to replicate certain aspects of that MVPD experience and the traditional kind of lean back experience that people are comfortable with, as well as providing the content we thought that people wanted, as that was a gap in the market, as you mentioned earlier, at a price point that, they could afford. So.
Great. So you're kind of in a unique position, right? Being at a vMVPD, but not only are you at one, but you also are one of the co-founders. So you were there seeing pre-launch, obviously post-launch, and now you're seeing as it's become a sustained service. Can you walk our audience through kind of the building blocks, the whole process, that strategic process, as much as you can share, obviously, about, the idea came up. You mentioned, I saw in your bio that the whole team there, right, has more than 70 years experience in pay TV. So I imagine that I mentioned in your intro that you had some time at Dish Network, obviously on the traditional side. So maybe just kind of talk about where the idea kind of germinated from. What are the considerations that you were thinking through as the team, the founding team, when you're talking about launching a vMVPD? I think our audience will really be interested in hearing that.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think, we spent a lot of time looking and modeling out the business. So, I think there's a clearly like a need to predict what your cost structure is going to be going forward, right? And the capital requirements associated with starting the business. So I think we had a really good understanding of that, just based on the collective experience that you mentioned. That 70 plus years of experience really had a strong factor in how we were able to model out the business in a reasonable manner. I think clearly there was a lot of strategy amongst our team with how we approached our contracts on the programming side of things, and kind of the main assumptions there that are driving kind of the overall gross margins of the business. So there was a lot of work that went into that, even prior to raising capital for us. So I think we had a good understanding what we were going into on that side of things. We also focused a lot on the user experience and kind of what the sign-up flow would look like, right? We wanted to get people into the funnel and through the funnel in a way that was, easy for them to drive a strong roll to pay rate. We still do have free trials. We have a seven-day free trial period, and we've seen really strong roll to pay rates. And we think a lot of that has to do with both the content that we offer as well as the ease of signups for the service. So I think some of the the other primary considerations, right, are just understanding clearly, like having an idea of what the overall target market is, and understanding subscriber growth rates, right? So just kind of being able to reasonably model out kind of where, what those look like and what the costs are, right? I think your main key KPIs for a traditional MVPD are irrelevant in the virtual MVPD space, meaning, right, like, you want to have a good idea of what your SAC's going to be, what overall engagement and churn is going to look like, and not only churn, but looking at things and as far as kind of like a cohort analysis goes, right? Just understanding, what that customer's life cycle kind of look like over time. And then obviously, like, your LTV to SAC, leading into that, right? Just kind of LTV to SAC metrics and how do those look? And, I think we also spend a lot of time on what our customer support needs would be. That was a big aspect for us going forward, where we actually, all four of us co-founders were actively customer support reps at the beginning of this, which was a great, experience for us. We really got to know our customer and what they're looking for and who they were. We've since built out a great team there, and have chosen to keep that domestic. And we feel really good about our team. We think we have great people, and we think that maintaining a high quality there is key. And, kind of goes without saying probably, but we have a strong investor group, and we have a lot of support there. And we've been very fortunate from that perspective to have the flexibility that we needed to do what we wanted to do. And then, I would also just say some of our just kind of being aware and really knowledgeable about what your contractual obligations are going into launching the business and moving forward, right? Just kind of having this really strong understanding of what's going to be, what could be potential roadblocks down the line, and what you need to be smart about.
Yeah, that's fantastic perspective. I appreciate all that, Michael. And yeah, one of the things that you mentioned, we always everyone in the industry focuses on price and content. I think other components of the user experience you mentioned about support, right? That's things that aren't sexy or talked about a lot in the press or otherwise, or at events a lot. But those are the kind of the backbone of the user, part of the backbone of the user experience in retaining customers. So I'm glad you brought that up. We have a lot of questions coming in. I kind of want to dovetail on one of them, which is asking about rising content costs and how you're going to keep your prices low. Actually, it ties into two of our questions. So not only are you a co-founder, but we hit the jackpot here, because not only are you a co-founder, but you're also a so you're the money guy. I don't want to turn this into an economics class, but I would, one of the things about pay TV, right, obviously it's defined by its business model. And one of the things that traditional players have struggled with that business model, and now those in the vMVPD space are struggling with, is that the business model a lot of it is tied to the content costs as part of carriage agreements for content providers. As those continue to escalate, right, the costs are going to have to either be absorbed internally or passed on to consumers. And, Paul kind of mentioned it with some of the bigger players in the vMVPD space. As soon as they sign a big carriage agreement to add, some big name channels to their lineup, right away, 20-30% price hike. So can you talk about how you kind of view the pay TV business model? What are the implications for it as far as the long-term sustainability of the vMVPD space? And how is Friendly TV, which kind of ties into one of our questions, how's Friendly TV being able to kind of manage it, keeping your monthly price low, and are you going to be able to keep it low?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there's a lot to that. I think.
Sorry, but yeah.
As I mentioned, the team, we're all from pay TV initially, right? And so I think we certainly understand all those dynamics, right? I think we kind of approached the business in a way that we're not we're not trying to be everything to everyone, right? I mean, we kind of understood there was a sweet spot where we were looking to deploy the service, and so we wanted to concentrate kind of on that sweet spot, and not overload ourselves with additional channels or costs that weren't necessary for our business, right? And so I think what you've seen and what we've really tried to avoid is that there is a tendency to go towards that general entertainment, try to be everything to everyone. And in that approach, right, like you do take on a lot of additional content costs that you wouldn't, right, through our model. So I think some of the strengths and weaknesses in the MVPD space that you guys were talking about earlier are still relevant today, and I think people are leaving. People are clearly leaving MVPDs because of price and content, and paying for things that they don't necessarily want or need. So, I mean, as far as from Friendly's perspective, we're clearly aware of that, and we're aware of what our costs are and our cost structure looks like going forward. So I think we approached it in a little bit of the other way, in terms of, like I said, going out, seeing what those contracts look like, modeling out the business, and then pricing based on that, and understanding that we had a really strong value prop from that perspective. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. And kind of tying into that, I wanted to talk a little bit more about your go-to-market strategy. You are unique in that you've stayed away from some of the higher price content areas, sports, news, general entertainment, even though obviously that kind of overlaps with some of the channels that you have. It kind of leads into one of our questions. Maybe we can kind of make it a broader question. Someone's asking about your recent announcement of a partnership with Cinedime, right? I believe they're speaking of adding the Dove channel, right, to your lineup. I think you're up to 16 channels as part of your package at this point. So can you talk about maybe specifically about that partnership, or maybe more in general, what do you look for in a content partner? Obviously, it has to kind of fit into your whole mission statement about family-friendly entertainment, but maybe walk us through that process.
Yeah, I think specifically, right, it has to fit into that, our mission statement, so to speak, of family-friendly content. But I think we've kind of looked at it too from the perspective of what resonates with our customer base. We've relied really on the data that we're getting and that we're seeing to see what that's how we've kind of approached those decisions, is what resonates with our consumers, what are they engaging with, what will be helpful from the perspective of keeping having them stick around, as well as where's their additional growth, right? And so really kind of spending a lot of time looking at it from that perspective and understanding what does that look like, what's the cost benefit analysis associated with that. My partners might answer that a little differently than I do, right, as the finance guy, but that's the way I think about it, at least.
Interesting. Yeah, really interesting. So we kind of talked about, you touched on it a little bit, I touched on it a little bit in the intro about you had some pretty big announcements that are, really big milestones for an OTT service, especially in this competitive market. The first one being your huge subscriber growth that you announced. You mentioned over 400,000 subscribers, which is obviously fantastic growth. And then to me, even more interesting and incredibly rare in the OTT space, service space, is that you announced that you're now profitable. So again, maybe putting on your finance hat a little bit, I'd first like to hear, what are some of the drivers you see for the big gains in subscribers? And then more on the profitability piece of it, what was the drivers behind that, and why is it so difficult for OTT services to become that? People maybe outside the industry don't understand that, and even though they may have tens of millions of subscribers, services are generally in the OTT space are not profitable, may not be for 5-10 years down the line. So you talk a little bit more about why that is and how Friendly was able to kind of navigate around that.
Yeah. I think first off, we saw early on that there's definitely an appetite for the content that we were providing at the price point which we were providing it. I mean, we actually started with not really doing much marketing, and we saw a lot of success early on of people actually actively finding us and adding us through apps such as Roku and Amazon. So we thought that those early indicators were really, really strong, right? That we were onto something. I think that our brand and marketing tactics really kind of set us apart in terms of how we're approaching the market and obtaining subscribers. We've had really strong, we have a really strong team there. Basil, our CEO, came from Sling, and he, ran some of the marketing efforts at Sling. So he has a very strong understanding of what it takes to acquire subs at a reasonable rate and through the right platforms. So, we've had a lot of success on social platforms. We've had a lot of success with Roku. Advertising on Roku, which they announced, our success there. They announced publicly our success with them there. So I think as far as acquiring subs and driving that growth, that's really kind of been how we've been successful there. As far as profitability goes, I think it kind of just goes back to the earlier point of what we were talking about in terms of really having a strong understanding of what your cost structure is going to look like, right? I mean, just kind of knowing in advance what your programming costs are going to be, what your rev share costs are going to be, what it's going to take to support the company operationally, from a technology perspective, from a G&A perspective, right? So I think just that's really, I would love to say it's rocket science, but it's not. It's just looking at the structure of it, and really having a strong understanding of what it's going to take and what it's going to take to scale. I think that might have been probably some of the challenges that folks have faced in the past. Is just really what does it take to scale, and those operational costs are probably higher than they anticipated initially, right? So I think that's probably what I would say for others in the looking outsiders looking in is the operational cost structure was more than they thought. Acquiring users was more than they thought it would take, right? And keeping people around was more than they thought it would take.
Yeah, that's well said. And obviously, Paul and Shane kind of touched on it. The market is obviously already consolidating. PlayStation Vue ceased operations beginning of last year. And we just had the announcement a couple days ago about TVision looking to fold and partner with some other vMVPDs. So it kind of leads into my last question, and our time has flown by, Michael. Really appreciate all your perspectives. Let's have a couple minutes left, and I always like to spin things forward and put you on the spot and predict the future, so no pressure. But over the next 1 to 2 years, because that's 2020 has shown us a year, it's more like 10 years in the OTT space. So in the next 1 to 2 years, how do you kind of see the vMVPD space kind of evolving? And then what is Friendly's role in that, and how do you plan to move along with that evolution?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question again. I mean, it really will be interesting to see how it plays out. I mean, I think clearly I don't see the trend of people cutting the cord or bandwidth expansion, consumption changing over the next few years. So I think the macro tailwinds will continue to be there. I mean, as you guys have pointed out actually in your earlier slides, right? I think those trends will continue. I think part of the struggle will be to continue to surface attractive content, right? I think that's some of the struggle that some of the OTT guys are seeing now in terms of like surfacing content that people want to watch, and so much content just gets buried in all the thousands and thousands of hours of on-demand content some of those guys have. So I think there'll be, you know, that'll be something that changes over the next couple of years, I think. And I think as you know, you know, the trend of folks like us, I think, right, that are approaching things in a more targeted manner, I think that'll continue as well, right? There'll be more of that, just because there's the ease of technology kind of, you know, enables that you can reach people more specifically. So, you know, I think where we play in that is that we're very strongly positioned from that perspective, because we're, you know, offering a service to a targeted user base. And so I think, you know, with those macro tailwinds, I think we're in a really good spot to continue to see success. So it'll boil down to, you know, whether or not we're able to execute, and those tailwinds really do hold, and those trends continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love, Michael, this has been a fantastic discussion. I wish we could talk for hours, but unfortunately our time is up. Really appreciate your time today and your perspective and your expertise. It's much appreciated by me and the audience here. Hopefully you'll get to stick around for the rest of the session and join us for our networking session at the end of today's discussion. So thanks again, Michael. Appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And with that, just hang on tight for a minute, and we're going to be back with our interactive panel discussion led by my colleague, Paul Erickson. Thanks for joining us.
This research can be found in my new report, Growth and Challenges for vMVPDs. Subscriber losses in traditional pay TV continue while the vMVPD category continues to grow, thanks to consumer price sensitivity and preference for flexibility on the types of devices they can watch on. The absence of live sports and live performances during the COVID-19 pandemic created challenges for vMVPDs. And successful services like Hulu plus Live TV and YouTube TV have been able to push advantages in pricing, promotion, content, and platform flexibility to drive growth. Virtual MVPDs, services that provide online subscriptions to bundles of live linear channels, have become a force in the U.S. pay TV marketplace. Each is taking a differing approach to the market and experiencing unique results. This new industry report examines the growth of this sector of the pay TV market, the strategies and outlook for major market players, and the challenges that lie ahead for vMVPDs and the pay TV market as a whole. You can download a table of contents today or purchase this report on the Parks Associates website, www.parksassociates.com. For more information on growth and challenges for vMVPDs, contact sales@parksassociates.com. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you again, Steve and Mike, for that great Q&A, very informative. And it's time for our discussion panel. So we are joined today by Carolyn Ferreira of Philo, Michael Ribeiro of Viacom CBS, Greg Riker of Metrological, and Nick Wilson of TiVo. So welcome, everyone. We're happy to have you here for this discussion today. And I'd like to encourage the audience, just remember to submit your Q&A questions at any time through SwapCard for us to address at the end during our Q&A portion. And before we start, we'd like to have each of our panelists introduce themselves and tell us a bit about themselves and what they do in their roles at each of their companies. So let's start with Carolyn. Carolyn, tell us a bit about yourself and your role at Philo.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Ferreira, and I head up customer acquisition here at Philo. A little bit about me, I have a mix of experience in marketing and strategy. Philo is 60 plus channels for live and on-demand content for $20 a month. We have unlimited DVR, and we're able to stream up to 3 devices at once and up to 10 profiles.
Perfect. Thank you, Carolyn. Michael, tell us a bit about yourself and what you do.
Hey, everyone. Happy to be here. So Mike Ribeiro, I am currently VP Global Marketing at Paramount Plus. I do all things brand marketing, targeting, positioning, etc. We just launched Paramount Plus early in March, the rebrand from CBS All Access. And then most recently, I actually just switched from Sling TV, so actually still in Denver. But I was on the Sling TV team back in 2016, so have been there and been in the category for over 5 years now.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. Greg, how about you? Tell us a bit about yourself and your work at Metrological.
Yep. Hey, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
There we go. All right. I was having trouble with the video side. Thanks very much, guys. My name is Greg Riker. Work at Metrological, a Comcast company. I'm responsible really for driving our business through the Americas. Our kind of goal and value proposition to the industry is really to try and bring over-the-top content to the living room and multiple devices, and really integrate that into different experiences, whether it's live linear, vMVPD. We also deal a lot with the CSPs or the content providers to help our customers get some of the carriage agreements that they need with a bunch of the content over the top application providers. So that is me.
Great. Thanks, Greg. And last but definitely not least, we've got Nick Wilson here from TiVo. Nick, tell us a bit about you and your role at TiVo.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm Nick Wilson. I'm our head of global customer success, so all of our go-to-market support and services teams. I've held a number of different roles at TiVo, engineering, product management, before moving into our go-to-market area. And we have direct operator, direct to retail products, and I've been in this space for a long time. I came to TiVo through the Fan TV acquisition, so really looking forward to this conversation.
Great. Thank you, Nick. Well, welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here today. And I'd like to launch directly into our big question here. One of the original, one of the original appeals of leaving traditional pay TV for vMVPD was the difference in price. But the rise in cost of content is narrowing that price advantage. So what are effective ways now to manage this trend and to still deliver to users higher perceived value compared to traditional pay TV? And for this one, I'm going to go to Michael of Viacom CBS, Carolyn of Philo, and Greg of Metrological. So Michael, let's go to you. What are ways to manage this trend of rising cost of content?
Awesome. Thanks for the question. So I'd kind of put it into 3 different buckets. So first of all, I think a really big appeal for consumers is it's in the virtual world is it's not traditional pay TV. And I think it works on a number of levels. So first, I think it's price. And I think as long as there's going to be a price differential, we did so much research, we spent so much money on advertising, really trying to drive differentiation. A lot of times I think customers begin to sort of see everyone the same and they ultimately go to price and channels. And if you can deliver against that, you're probably going to win most of the time. The second in not paid TV is like brand. I'd say in a lot of conversations we had, you had people leading the way in OTT. I stream Netflix. I listen to music on Spotify. Oh, but I also have like Comcast. Sorry, Greg. But it was a bit of a like scarlet letter in the sense, like, I don't want to be the person in the room that has to tell other people I get my TV through Comcast. And then the other thing I would say is just being able to watch whenever and wherever you want, really like fitting into your life in a way that maybe some of the traditional providers don't. So, a lot of times you have to have a box from, say, a Comcast, sorry to keep picking on you, Greg, or a Charter and the like. But, people, that's not how people consume content anymore. They have a Fire TV or they have a smart TV and they want to be able to watch the way they want to watch and like have, a bit of a more seamless integration in some of the other OTT apps because we know they're going kind of back and forth. So that'd be the first bucket. The second, I think, is like content aggregation. I think here, this is a real big opportunity for vMVPDs. So in the sense that they're not really pushing their own original content a lot of the other direct-to-consumer apps do. I feel like when I log on to Netflix, every recommended show is another Netflix show. I think, they operate maybe at an arm's length and can really be a customer advocate about what are the right shows to watch? How do we, help, make you aware of the right things, without kind of their own personal gain in it. And then lastly, I think, a way to really differentiate and maybe the most exciting is really to offer this superior viewing experience. I think we're starting to see flavors of it and hopefully, the pace of innovation just accelerates. But I think it was mentioned earlier, like with Fubo being able to integrate betting into the interface, I think really exciting. When I was at Sling TV, we launched a feature called Watch Party, where it was like Zoom meets, Sling, and you could watch along with other people in your family or friends and the like. But, really, I think looking to other categories, like the Twitches of the world who are doing really cool customer innovation, knowing that they have access to really premium content and sort of bringing the two. So those are the three things that I'd highlight.
Well, thanks, Michael. And I think you hit on a good point there where if we look at quality of experience and convenience, getting to people where they're at, on the device they're on, it definitely helps with chasing that intangible perceived value. Carolyn from Philo, what are your thoughts on this and how we manage the rising prices by delivering better perceived value to consumers?
Yeah, similar to the previous speaker at Philo, we are definitely committed to putting our customer first and continuing to delight them with content that is relevant for them and a best-in-class product experience. And in terms of competing directly with cable, we don't typically think of ourselves in that way. A lot of our customers have actually been previously priced out of cable. And so we've made strategic decisions. We don't offer news, we don't offer sports, so that we can continue to offer a diversity of content, over 60 channels to our customers at an affordable price point. So we've continued to just put our customers first and are strategic about those decisions as we navigate the ever-changing landscape.
Well, thanks, Caroline. I think that's good. That's a good angle to hit, especially as customers. I'll make a generalization about traditional pay TV, where a lot of customers have a feeling that they're simply not. Efforts are not directed towards them, right? They're not customer-centric organizations. That's the feel customers have. That the larger traditional pay TV operators are not really that customer-centric. So I think tapping into that is definitely a good angle. And last, I'd like to ask Greg from Metrological for his take on this one as well. How do we manage an environment of rising content costs and still deliver higher perceived value?
Yeah, I think, thank you very much. I think you look at the vMVPDs in a couple of ways. You look at them really, in my world, in two different buckets. You've got your general entertainment buckets, the Hulus, the YouTubes, the Slings, that are really trying to just simply replace your traditional TV bundle, if you will. And then you look at some of more of the niche players like the Friendlies, the Fubo, Philo, some of these guys that are really focusing on delivering specific value to the customers and to the niche that they're trying to serve. So as you kind of look at trying to generate that value and create that stickiness, it really you need to kind of determine who do you want to be and how do you want to kind of deliver the services that you want to deliver to your customers. And I think what we're seeing is, this general entertainment bucket is starting to, again, continue to look more and more and more like a traditional TV service without the scale, without the volume of eyes, and it's a real challenge for them to, continue to move that business model forward. But more on the niche side, you're seeing people really targeting the customers that they want to go after. I think it's really important to keep that stickiness, which is making sure you've got the content relevant and the content available for the customers that you're going after. Provide great search and recommendation. I think the last speaker we had talked to or was on really talked about content being lost and that investment's gone, and you've got to figure ways to surface that content up to your customers to keep things fresh. A brilliant statement that I always like to hear is customer service, right? It's in my world, in the traditional MVPD world, we always get knocked for, not having the greatest customer service. It's difficult to kind of get the things that you want to get out of kind of the traditional guys. So focusing on making sure that you're doing what you say when you're going to say and do it, and invest in the right places such as customer service. And then finally, it's all about, kind of onboarding. That onboarding, is a much more important aspect to getting these services up and running. If it's easy, you're able to do it quickly and do it seamlessly. The stickiness of that seems to be much more. It's a longer period of time from a churn standpoint. And then finally, it's all about the UI and the experience, right? What are you giving your customers? How are you integrating these different services within the experience itself? Whether it's betting, whether it's social media integration, whether it's whatever that happens to be, but really focusing on the customer's needs, focusing on the things that you can control, focusing on the cost of the content, keeping things fresh, that keeps things relevant. I look at it from a metrological perspective, and we look at things in terms of scale and eyeballs, and as you have that scale and as you have the eyeballs, it allows you to do things a lot differently than if you don't. So your content cost drivers are down, your ability to refresh things faster. So, it's all about building the business in terms of eyeballs, giving the services that your customers are asking for, making it easy for them to enjoy the service, and continually refresh that experience for them. So that's kind of how we look at it.
Thanks, Grant. I think you touch on a common theme there, which perhaps can be a common theme for everybody to look at when they contrast against traditional pay TV, which is a customer-centric focus, right? So whether that's in the customer service aspect, it's in deeper and more incisive personalization, or it's in rolling out other functionalities such as the social watching and so forth, just being conscious of addressing an audience that has felt perhaps ignored by the traditional organizations of old is a good direction to have. So I'd like to move to my next question. After this one, I'd like to tap Nick from TiVo and Michael from Viacom CBS for this one. So my question is, due to factors that are inherent to vMVPDs and OTT in general, there's a higher level of churn in traditional pay TV services. And that higher level of churn is a factor that's likely to persist, and it puts a big focus on subscriber retention. And so with subscriber retention of paramount importance, what are effective product and service strategies to try and maximize customer retention in this environment?
Yeah, so I would look at it in three buckets, right? One is, I think one of the things that we've seen pay TV be successful with is bundling other services into pay TV, right? For traditional pay TV operators, it may be phone, it may be broadband, maybe mobile. We see more and more people offering security. But what other parts of someone's life can you offer them value? And maybe it's just bundling in OTT subscriptions like what we've seen T-Mobile's doing. But find those services so that if they cancel your service, they're not just canceling video. I think, and I won't go too much into this one, but I think we heard everyone in the last question talk about how do you provide the best customer experience, right? What are those things that you can offer the end consumer that differentiate you outside of just the channels, right? We're going to see more and more, I think, equalization of the channels and the prices across these points as time goes on. But can you offer content aggregation across different services? Can you bring in more free channels? Do you have channels that differentiate you? And then the third one, and I think this is something where Sling kind of has a good idea, and where I think there's a benefit to what YouTube TV is doing going forward is, can you create a model where there's an upfront capital investment that incentivizes someone to stay with you because of differentiation of experience? And when I talk about that, I'm thinking about, can you get someone to purchase a device where your experience is premium on that device? So Sling, I think, does a great job with the Air TV players. I think the integration that YouTube has now with YouTube TV has with the Chromecast is great. And TiVo, our direct to retail device, the Stream 4K, it has native integration with the Sling content as well. And so if there are ways that you can differentiate with that hardware, with that capital investment in the hardware, someone may say, man, I bought this device, so I might as well stick with what I have. It's how do you create all these little things that are a reason for someone to not look somewhere else, right? Because it's like the job search almost, right? Your best way to keep someone is to keep them from looking, not necessarily, right? Once they start looking, you're at risk.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think, when we look at access to content being, well, maybe not universal, but people having plenty of choice, one of the effective ways to differentiate is in how you bring that content to them. And perhaps that's the quality of experience that they're getting at that last mile, okay, that screen that's in front of them. And maybe that's better aggregation of everything and, a smarter, more curated, more personalized, first couple rows of the experience, right, with the content surfaced that they're most interested in. So it's definitely a way to differentiate a product and, perhaps make it a bit more sticky in an environment where people are bombarded by choice and a number of different devices that they can consume on. So it's an interesting strategy. Michael from Viacom CBS, what are ways that we can manage the level of churn or maximize customer retention and essentially deliver a higher valued experience?
Yeah, Nick, you stole my ammo there, using all the Sling examples. So I think building off of Nick, I think he had really good points. Is essentially like, don't give someone a reason to look elsewhere. I think the bundling and the hardware helps. The one, and I'm going to say it because maybe it's too basic, but like the service has got to work, and it's got to work like regular TV. I think the positioning that we took at Sling, was very much replacing cable, and so you were asking someone who is in the traditional ecosystem to come to vMVPD, and when traditional, it worked 99.999% of the time. I can't say that always happens in the virtual world, and especially when you start to talk about like the killer value props for the virtual world and being able to get live sports for a much lower rate. If you have buffering, any sort of buffering or any sort of like lapse, there's no amount of customer service, there's no amount of rebate. Like people hate you and they want to leave. So it sounds very basic, but like it's got to work, and it's got to work flawlessly. I think it was talked about earlier, but as we like look to bring another generation into pay TV, kids these days on TikTok, they're used to essentially like 0.01 seconds of latency. And if we as an industry can't provide that same sort of, meet those same sort of expectations, and I know it's really hard to do, so I don't mean to discount that at all. I think we're going to be fighting an uphill battle. So that would be one point. The second, I think, is continuing to explain to people sort of like where you fit in, how you fit in, and sort of So I think the good one at Sling is like when we were there, and even now at CBS, it's saying how we complement Netflix, saying how you complement Hulu. It sounds a little counterintuitive, like why should you talk about the competition? But when you can, establish kind of a go-to in people's mind, I think it helps. I'd also say the sort of the linear nature and being able to like turn on and something is just on. I know Netflix is experimenting with that, like this idea of like discovery fatigue. I just want to turn something on, and so like being able to lean into that advantage is, I think, interesting and worthy of exploration. The last point I'd make is, I think maybe as a category, it might make sense to rethink, how we track churn to begin with. I think, historically with traditional pay TV, at Dish, it was like a 2-year price lock. But people are typically staying for, 5 years and then leaving for another provider. I think, in the virtual world, churn might be higher if you look sort of year over year. But I think like if you get down to the individual level, thinking about, maybe someone just doesn't need pay TV in the same way that they did historically. And so I'll go to like the seasonal viewing. If you think about a football fan, maybe they only come in every single football season, but if you can go football to football season, having that individual return every single year, is that a win or not? And so, maybe it's monthly recurring revenue, or maybe it's, percent returning from season to season, if you're able to grow that. But thinking about other KPIs that maybe acknowledge the shift in paradigm in the way people are using vMVPD services versus traditional pay TV.
Right. And appreciate that, Michael. I think you bring up a good point, which is that unless people get the fundamentals right, especially in an age where people can switch so quickly and the attention span is so short, unless you get the fundamentals of it being able to consume reliably, and consume quickly, you won't actually be able to get into some of the more involved functionality and personalization and quality of service and so on. So the basics have to work. Let me pose my next question to Carolyn of Philo, Nick of TiVo, and Greg of Metrological. So Carolyn, you're going to be first up. This is an interesting question here that I'm sure Nick is going to have a lot. Actually, all of you will have a lot to say because it's an issue affecting everyone, especially all end users, which is that OTT delivery and a disaggregation of many services from the traditionally much disliked pay TV bundle has brought consumers more choice than they've ever had. And this is coming full circle somewhat, as a lot of consumers are now overwhelmed by all the choice that they have and multiple bills coming in, and they're looking for some level of simplification of this pay TV experience, of the TV experience overall. And so how can vMVPDs most effectively seize upon this in a way that's unique from traditional pay TV and standalone OTT services? Is it a matter of pricing and bundling? Is it the UX? Is it agnostic personalization and unified billing? What are ways that you see that are effective to simplify this for consumers? And I'll go to Carolyn on this one first. Carolyn, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so building on the conversation, Philo really likes to focus on our core competencies. Our core competencies are an efficient price point that includes our bundle, a best-in-class technology experience, and efficient customer acquisition. And so we are very strategic about really leaning into those core competencies. In the same way that Walmart has a lot of different products and services, we feel like there are efficiencies, obviously, that can be gained by bundling and continuing to delight and really just leaning into what we do well. As was mentioned previously, some of these things seem simple, like, for example, a delightful customer experience. But as was mentioned, it can be challenging to deliver that value prop. At Philo, we are so committed to an exceptional customer service experience that every single Philo employee is required and is encouraged to do what we call ride-alongs, which is to answer questions from our customers, understand what their pain points are, and really just make sure that we are all strong advocates for the voice of the customer. That is a huge part of what we are committed to in terms of delivering value. In terms of technology, we are similarly incorporating our customers' feedback to prioritize the products and features that we offer them, of course, putting the customer first. And like we mentioned previously, we're not trying to be everything for everyone. Similar if you were to go to a restaurant and they served sushi and tacos and ravioli, that's probably not going to be the best ravioli that you've ever had. So similarly, we currently do not offer original content. Like mentioned previously, we don't offer sports and news. We are extremely focused on our core competencies and really using that as a differentiator. A lot of people have come into the space and have left because the economics didn't work. And so we just continue to be laser focused on the customer, our technology, and our acquisition efficiency.
Thanks, Carolyn. I think those are good directions to take, being very clearly focused on what you are and what you're not trying to be, and taking the customer first in an environment where they're feeling disenfranchised in the past, where they've been ignored. I think those are great directions. Nick from TiVo, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. How do we is really attacking this level of overwhelming choice and overwhelming confusion for consumers? What does it come down to from the TiVo perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of take this in three ways. And the first one, I'll just echo what Carolyn said. I think one of the ways to differentiate yourself is to have a niche and to be the best in it. And that's absolutely something that we see. And I'd argue they're kind of ahead of the curve, because leading into my second point, I think we're starting to see even a breakdown of what you can offer in the virtual MVPD bundle, right? As we argue more and more that a lot of the value of live TV is sports and news. I found the recent news around the NFL content rights negotiations to be really interesting. So you look at it today, with a big enough pay TV bundle, I can get any game on my cable box. But come 2023 with the new rights, if I want to watch Thursday Night Football, I've got to have an Amazon subscription. If I want to watch, if I want Sunday Ticket, it's not, my DirecTV subscription isn't going to be any good for that anymore. I'm going to have an ESPN Plus subscription. And so I think there's that's building an opportunity for more bundling and aggregation to be a service that virtual MVPDs provide. And it's something that I think has been a gap for a while, and leads into my third point, which is where I feel TiVo's strength is, which is, you talked about agnostic personalization. I would really say it's providing an agnostic platform, right? Who are being a player that doesn't have any allegiance to any one content service or source, right? And so how do you bring OTT content together, bring virtual MVPD content together, and be able to direct the consumer, not just the content that's relevant to them, but potentially to services that are relevant to them, to be able to help improve the experience. And so we, this is something that we've been looking at, is can you build recommendations, not just on content of services for people, help them manage their subscriptions, look at where they're consuming content, what are they paying for these different services, what services that they don't subscribe to have content that may be relevant to them and the best bang for the buck. And then is there opportunity to start to work towards billing, right? As you think about the value of cable providers for a long time, most of them aren't even now. They're not in original content. They're an aggregator of content. And so how do we, I think if you step back to 50,000 feet, the need in the industry is the same need that cable providers have been solving for 20 years is how do you aggregate all this content together in one place, and who are the people that are best? It's kind of right. You have live content providers now, you have device manufacturers, and you have OTT. How and who can connect all these together in a way that creates a cohesive end user experience and kind of eliminates some of the confusion and the paradox of choice that exists today.
Right, and that's a good point. I mean, I think previously a lot of people, they had the feeling that they paid for a lot of channels that they weren't interested in. And so, part of the opportunity that they've seen in consuming things over OTT now is a greater sense of power over what they watch and of choice. But now the challenge is they have too much choice. So I think for vMVPDs to capitalize on this, the open question is to make sure that that parties are aggregating not just the content, but aggregating how it's presented at that last mile, right, at the interface level, like making sure that not only are people watching, not only do people have access to the things they want to watch, but are they seeing the titles from those sources in some functional way. So I think that's an ongoing challenge for the business. Greg from Metrological, what are your thoughts on this and how to simplify the experience for vMVPD customers?
Yeah, and I think the first thing I want to just represent here is, you talk about these big bundles of channels, and people are frustrated because they think they're paying for something that they're not using. And the misnomer there is all of those channels are subsidizing really the top 5 or 10 that are out there in terms of costs on the carriage side of things. So, as the bundles start to creep up on price, and we're, we as consumers are starting to feel that and understand that there are certain content that is more expensive than other content. And that's where I think some of the niche MVPDs are really going to shine, because they're not going to go after this kind of general bundle and really kind of focus on content that they can freshen up and offer to their customers. But I think obviously bundling is kind of the key with all of this, and we're seeing bundling happen every single day. And I don't mean the bundle with the technology side. Apple's kind of perfected that with, I've got who knows how many thousands of dollars of apps on my phone. I'll never leave an Apple device simply because of that. But I think you're seeing like the Disney, ESPN, Hulu starting to bundle these big bundles. You're seeing Fubo starting to do some things with the sports side on that, and then introducing some of the gambling. But I think what we need to do from an industry standpoint and start to not necessarily look at churning from services, but embrace something called content churn, right? I think we're seeing a lot of fatigue when it comes to a lot of these different channels that don't necessarily have refreshing content fast enough. So there might be a show on a certain channel or a certain app that's interesting for me for a series or for a certain period of time. And then, after that, I'm not really that interested in that. And I think as you start to look at bundles, the ability to do some subscription management based on channels specifically within that bundle will drive a lot of the vMVPDs to really have this value add above and beyond some of these other services that are kind of hanging out there. So, I might have some technology, some artificial intelligence, whatever that happens to be, understanding my viewing behavior, my viewing patterns, and say, you know what, you haven't watched this channel in X number of months or whatever. Maybe let's downgrade that channel, and here's a different channel that might offer the same kind of content that's available for us in the vMVPD world, and offer that up to allow us just to continue that value gain within the service itself. But ultimately, it's all about eyeballs, right? I mean, the more eyeballs you've got, the more ability you have to monetize all of this content across all of your service, which then allows you to introduce different business models. And, we're all used to ad-supported TV now, and, the research has shown that most people are okay with ads for a certain period of time, and we're willing to watch ads to keep our prices down lower. But as you start to, increase those eyeballs, that ability for you to monetize those eyes differently than if, the less eyeballs versus the more eyeballs will start to drive, this space into a way that there'll be, the haves and the have-nots. I think the more eyeballs you have will start to cannibalize some of the other services that are out there. And then that's when this bundling will start to happen again. And, it's just this evolution that we're going to continue to see happen. And it's driven by consumer behavior, and it's driven by the number of eyes that are hanging out there, and it's driven by the content that's available to us for consumers. So I think as the virtual MVPDs, if we can continue to stay mobile or agile, I guess is the right word, and be able to continue to offer these things out to our customers, will allow us to deliver the services that our customers are asking for.
Thanks, Greg. Yes, and it's definitely a lot of challenges there with managing multiple pressures at the same time between cost, keeping bundles focused, and of course giving customers what they need, and chasing, eyeballs, scale of eyeballs. I'd like to divert from my next question to kind of cut to one of our audience questions, our audience survey, and look at the results from that. So let's pull up one of them. So we asked the question in the audience: what is the main barrier preventing traditional pay TV subscribers from moving over to vMVPD? Top answer, 43% replied, just habits, being used to what they already knew. 21%, significant difference, but number two was price difference is not significant enough between the MVPDs and traditional pay TV. 29% said it's generational, just because, younger generations, they don't subscribe to traditional pay TV to begin with. And the least popular answer, but still only 7%, was that service provider bundling of pay TV with broadband. So the top answer is just that people were just accustomed to consuming traditional pay TV was the reason they weren't moving over to vMVPDs. So interesting. Any thoughts on that? Does that validate anything of what you guys think, or are there any surprises there?
Doesn't surprise me. I mean, I think again, I think earlier we talked about, or I think I brought up, it's the onboarding process as well, right? I mean, we're used to just being able to turn on the TV and it works. And I think with kind of the virtual services that are out there, there's still some work that needs to happen to make all this, just turn on and be able to get what you want to see. And we kind of, a lot of us just point back to look at kind of our parents or some of the other older generation that can't plug in a Fire Stick and then have to change the source and do all of these other things. They just want to turn on the television and be able to put a EPG on and watch what they want to watch. So it doesn't surprise me. I do think it's a evolutionary thing, and I do think it will migrate itself as we're all used to on-demand TV and instant access and all of these other things. I think it's a matter of time, for us to get there. It's kind of morbid to think that way, but it is.
Paul, I jump in here too. So a lot of the research we did and a lot of the marketing that we did was really around triggers. So there were two types of triggers that really drove acquisition and still do for us for me at Paramount Plus now. So first is like life triggers. Someone moves, someone leaves the household to go to college, someone has a new baby. All of a sudden, purchases are reconsidered and they're saying, hey, do I need to save more money? Or, now I can sort of indulge myself because maybe I'm done paying. I have a child off the payroll, those sorts of things. And so those were, huge. And I'd say absolutely critical. It really shook up that inertia. The other I'd say is when there's a point of frustration. So say someone has trouble with their, again, I keep on picking on Greg and I'm sorry, Greg, but someone has trouble with their Comcast box, we would kind of bid on all of those keywords of how do I cancel Comcast or, trouble with my box or Comcast customer service. And that point of frustration is a bit of an open door. And sometimes the door is a lot, much wider open than in other circumstances, but it's definitely an opportunity to get someone, to switch from traditional category into the virtual category.
Yeah, I would just add too, is I think there's some technology problems we still have to solve, right? The, remote's a drawback, quality of trick play is a drawback. As someone who consumes a lot of sports, I can tell you the thing that drives me crazy and that we hear a lot from our operator customers on the TiVo side is when you're watching the Final Four game and you get the notification about who won before you see the buzzer beating shot in the game. And so there's some validity to some of those challenges and are things that we still need to work through from a technology perspective, I think.
Yeah, and adding to that point, as we think about trigger events, people buying a Roku or an Amazon or a new television is a really exciting time for people to also revisit their streaming service solution. That's one of the reasons why we are particularly excited about our partnership with Best Buy, is really to meet customers where they are as they are making those decisions, and then also being a voice on the ground for someone to talk to them about how to get started and how to get set up. So we definitely want to lean into those trigger events, and we're really excited about our partnership with Best Buy there.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for your input on that one. I would agree that the result doesn't exactly surprise me. That a lot of it is just what people are used to, and the prospect of dropping what they've done for years and years. Trying this new internet service, is it going to be equivalent? Does it have all the things I want to watch? Is it going to be easy? Well, I'm really used to my old remote. I'm not surprised that that's the top reason. It's going to take time, but I'm sure as I'm not going to take it from the morbid perspective, Greg, but I think that as time passes and people become more aware, maybe not as generations pass, but as people just become more and more aware and it's part of the public psyche, streaming devices, ways to consume streaming content, that's going to gradually shift. Being used to what they were used to, that's not going to be as much of a factor anymore. So let's transition now back to the last two questions I have for you all until we get to some of our audience questions. And my next one is going to be for Greg from Metrological and then Nick from TiVo. vMVPDs inherently target the connected consumer. And today's connected consumer has access to a wide variety of internet-connected video-capable devices, smartphones, connected TVs, their PC, what have you, at any given time. And increasingly, smart speaker or something else in the household, an always-on voice assistant in their pocket or in a device situated around their home. So what are ways to leverage this varied environment of connected devices and capabilities that can benefit the consumer, differentiate vMVPDs, and aid retention? What are your thoughts on this, Greg?
Yeah, I get a lot of thoughts on this subject actually, and I think from the last year and a half or whatever, we've all kind of been dealing with this whole COVID thing. I think we're starting to see the acceleration of a bunch of these different services, whether it's home health care or virtual education. Those type of applications and services have just accelerated more than I think we ever could have imagined, pre-COVID, if you will. And I think as a virtual MVPD, if we could start to embrace some of these services and start to offer those as part of an integration point, whether it's an Echo, Amazon Echo device integrated into an app that we can provide from a vMVPD for even these type of events, right? These kind of Zoom calls or whatever they happen to be, or virtual health appointments, and more importantly, even the virtual education side of things. And I know that from an industry standpoint, there's lots of activity happening there. Comcast and Independence Health Group have a joint venture around healthcare and virtual healthcare and monitoring elderly adults and those type of things, and how do they integrate some of that into services. And I think over time, whatever that happens to be, we're going to see a lot of these different services take advantage of all of these smart home technology that's there and provide services around that. So again, whether it's applications within the MVPD, whether it's integrated into a specific device, but I think this whole IoT smart home integration really is kind of the next bet for you to differentiate yourself with some of these. And the acceleration, I think, has been really dependent upon what we've dealt with for the last year and so. And so I know that we're seeing a lot of that, and I know that a lot of our customers outside of the U.S. and are looking to deliver those services from a virtual standpoint as well.
Great, thank you, Greg. Nick from TiVo, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the same thoughts, right? And I would even take it further or another point, maybe another perspective is I think there's a lot of challenges related to this too, right? How do you support all these platforms? Think about all the different devices that a consumer may have in their home, right? You have people who have an Apple TV, a Fire TV, a Roku, a Samsung TV in a room, and a TV in a room. That's a lot of development. People consuming on web, people consuming on mobile, and so the way I would put this is I think in order to keep retention, you've got to make sure you're on all the devices someone has. The last thing you want is to go and buy a fancy new TV and then realize that your service isn't available on there, and so they start shopping around for something else. I think one of the areas that's fun to think about is how does this continue to change over the maybe not just the next 12 months, but over the next 5 or 7 years, right? We're starting to see more and more people looking at how do you put TV experiences in. Today it's seat backs, but going forward, how do you put them in the seat forward, the screens in self-driving cars? What can you do around optimizing bandwidth? The deal is going to look like it get cut there. And maybe these aren't retention issues today, but they're areas that I think are interesting challenges for these vMVPDs to think about, because if you're not ahead of the curve, to the point that a couple of my co-panelists made earlier, the last thing you want is to not be on a device, and that to drive a shopping decision, right? A situation where someone's looking for a new service.
Right. Thanks for that. I actually going to cut away real quick, and thank you all for your input on that one. I want to cut away to get to a question which is actually really pertinent here that we posed to our audience, and the question was, what type of content do you feel most likely to drive vMVPD subscription and retention? And so our top answer at 41% of respondents was live sports. Close behind at 35% was exclusive movie or episodic content. And a lot further behind in third place was local channels, and just decreasingly from there, live events and international sports. But by far, the top two were live sports and exclusive movie and episodic content. Do these results surprise you all in any way, or what do you feel about it?
Paul, I'd jump in here. So being at two places now that offers like exclusive high profile sports, as an acquisition tool, no surprises there. I am surprised news isn't higher. I'd say, you know, where sports really drove volume into the service, there are also a lot of really bad customers in those cohorts. But you know, one that we saw was, you know, news, local news being part of it. You know, we at Sling, it was a little bit different in having some holes in local programming, but you know, we had cable news, and now at Paramount Plus, we have the local CBS affiliate. I mean, when you talk about like always on type of viewing, it's huge. And so maybe it's an engagement type thing instead of a retention type thing, but news really drives viewership hours.
Yeah, I think it's so I'll go back to one of my earlier answers. I think that sports is an interesting one here because we're starting to see sports to some degree fall out of what we would traditionally consider virtual MVPDs, right? As with Amazon getting the rights to Thursday Night Football, with the what was previously NFL Sunday Ticket potentially going to a traditional OTT provider. We're seeing more and more of this blending between the traditional OTT guys and the virtual MVPDs, and so I think this is something that that people in the space are going to have to continue to pay attention to. Because it's a moving target.
Yeah, and I would like to add that while a lot of people are really excited about sports and their local news and news in general, Philo not offering any of those, but still having a really passionate and enthusiastic customer base that's growing incredibly fast, I think shows that, you know, continuing to focus on your customers and not necessarily trying to be everything for everyone is also a way to really set yourself up for success.
And you know, that doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, I think from my perspective, you look at DirecTV and how that was positioned up with the NFL Sunday Ticket for so long. You know, there's a lot of sports fans out there. There's a lot of eyes again that's going to generate that. So for me, live sports is always going to be something for the masses. Obviously not the niche, but for the mass of it will drive definite engagement.
Yeah, I think I'm of the same mind that live sports has been known as a very strong engagement driver, a very strong motivator of people, and not just, you know, in the past it was like Super Bowls, World Cup, what have you, but you know, as we've seen over time, it's consistently a driver of subscription and retention, and people just actively engaging and watching and community viewing and so on. So it's definitely you know, one of the big factors to pay attention to content-wise. And I actually have one more question for you guys, but I'm going to instead go to our audience Q&A, some of our questions that we've got there, just because we have a lot of questions coming in. I want to make sure that we get to some of these and address them before we run up against time. So first one I'd like to ask of the panel is, how does the panel feel about the sustainability of the MVPDs if they have to continue to operate under the current pay TV model? It's a good, incisive question. Who wants to handle that one?
I can maybe give a view from someone who works with both vMVPDs and pay TV. Honestly, I think that they're starting to come together a little bit, right? We're starting to see more and more pay TV providers offer over-the-top content, right, or off of the set-top box. I think of the Xfinity Stream app or what Comcast has done with Roku, and so I think it'll be interesting to see going forward how these continue to coexist, what it does to the pay TV market in terms of continued consolidation, and then if you start to see a squeeze in how some of these content rights deals are negotiated. In network versus nationwide rights, if people start to try to put geo blocks around where certain vMVPDs can offer services,
Thanks, Nick.
I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
The question was, how does the panel feel about the sustainability of vMVPDs if they have to continue to operate under the current pay TV model? That's a good question.
Yeah. Are they really operating underneath the traditional pay TV model? Right. I guess that's the bigger question. You look at traditional pay TV, and you know, traditional pay TV is bound by franchise agreements within local markets and all of those sides of things, whereas the virtual MVPD really has access to wherever they can go from a district, as long as they've got the rights for the distribution side. So, you know, I would argue that they're not bound by traditional pay TV boundaries, if you will, and they've got some more flexibility and ability to do that. But, you know, again, I've said this 1,000 times, I'll continue to say it, sustainability has to do with eyeballs. And, you know, as long as you continue to increase your share and increase those eyeballs, your ability to monetize these things will continue to grow. And as long as you're able to offer the content and you've got the distribution rights in the areas, you know, that it'll continue to grow. So that would be my traditional pay TV ad.
Great. Thanks, Greg. Let's move to the next question, which is another one which I think speaks to everyone. Do you think that vMVPDs, well, let me rephrase this one. How do you think the vMVPD market will start providing custom bundles or more personalized bundles to start reducing the price or potentially reduce the price and hence churn? What's the way to go about that, do you think?
So I can jump in again. I think, Greg, you made the point earlier, right, that a lot of times some of the longer tail channels that people are paying for are really subsidizing the cost of the channels, the top 10% of viewership channels. And so the hard part of offering more a la carte is, are content owners going to offer the breakdown of those rights, or are they going to be better off offering direct channels? I think, you know, not to pick on our friends at CBS, but we saw that with CBS All Access, right? Is some of the content that was available direct was on the same level. And so, or if you look at what Disney or ESPN are doing, are content owners going to be willing to offer individual prices for single channels or smaller bundles of channels, or would they rather just go direct with those, in which case you'll have consumers with more packages and less what you would think of as a virtual MVPD?
Okay, thanks for that, Nick. Let's take another one. This is an interesting one. How do vMVPDs help in discovering content across multiple OTT services? Kind of like CSPs are transforming into super aggregation players. Nick, this might be one that's tailored for you, I think, from a TiVo perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two pieces. I think can virtual MVPDs do that I'll say unbiased, personalized discovery and help offer recommendations across services? I think they can. But I think there's an opportunity also for us to look at the kind of the ecosystem of virtual MVPDs and the devices they're being consumed on, and where kind of that aggregation of content sits best, right? At the end of the day, the value is to the end consumer, someone's providing it. And if I'm a virtual MVPD, I've got to look at my partnership options as well as my build options as I'm making that evaluation. I think if you look at the Stream 4K, our retail dongle, we've worked with Sling on this because Sling does a really great job of bringing content to consumers at a competitive price point. And TiVo's strength is aggregating that content. So we make sure to present that Sling content in a way that's most relevant to the users who subscribe, but also aggregate and bundle all the rest of that content so that the user gets the best of both worlds, right? And I think it's something that we've seen pay TV providers start to do more of, is offer that aggregation, and is an area that's a risk if virtual MVPDs don't have an answer for that consumer need.
Yeah, Paul.
I think.
Go for it, Greg.
I was just going to say, I think the ecosystem has to all agree with that as well, though, right? I mean, I think it's the metadata rights issue and who owns the metadata and who has access to the metadata, and I still think that is all being ironed out because there'll be certain service providers that have rights to metadata for some content, but other service providers that don't have rights, and it's a mishmash. I think the technologies is regardless of where it's coming from, whether it's TiVo or any of these other companies that are out there, it's still a rights issue. And I think understanding, being able to strip that in the rights across the board, that's going to be the key to success. I think in my mind.
Yeah, I would just build on Greg. I think you were going where I was going, Greg, is people are not going to do it really by want, but probably more by need. I think you might see someone like a Roku or an Amazon continue to apply pressure about being this super aggregated level, and especially if you don't have scale and don't have a loyal base that you can defend from. Some of the smaller players might be willing to go sort of the vMVPD route as opposed to the device route in order to begin to facilitate some of that aggregation for consumers.
Great. Carolyn, any thoughts on your end? How do you make it easier for consumers to discover content of OTT services in that single interface?
Yeah, we, within the Philo experience in particular, we have a lot of different ways to discover content. One thing that we're really excited about are our collections. So if you go to the Philo homepage, you'll see collections on reality TV and dramas and movies. And so it's a really great way to discover content across a multitude of channels. And often our customers are looking for us for that content recommendation. We had a Philo phone line that we were promoting where people could call and get content recommendations. And so we really want to be almost like the thought leader for those content recommendations across a multitude of different channels, and really just ensuring that within the Philo app and experience that there's something for everyone and that there's always new and exciting content to watch.
Well, thank you all. We're up against time, unfortunately, which is really unfortunate because we're really getting into some great content here, and we've got a lot of audience questions. So people are really, really engaged with what all of you have said today, and they have a lot of questions. And hopefully, those of you in the audience, maybe you can continue on for the virtual networking session that we have coming up right after this. Hopefully, we'll have some of our speakers join us, and perhaps we can address some of those questions there. But I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today. Thank you so much for a really great session and for some really great content. And we do appreciate that you guys provide such a diverse mix of perspectives here within the vMVPD value chain, right? So we've got from the service provider or vMVPD service provider, as it were, perspective. We've got the content provider perspective. We've got perspective from the app level and at the interface and experience level. So again, Carolyn Ferreira from Philo, Michael Ribeiro from Viacom CBS, Greg Reicher from Metrological, and Nick Wilson from TiVo. Thank you very much for joining us, and we hope to see you again. Take care.
Thank you for having us.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And so I'd like to thank our sponsors once again. Oops. There we go, sponsor slide. So I'd like to thank Everise, Delta Trade, Bright, and Metrological for making today possible. And we plan to have, as always, a continuing flow of events throughout the year, bringing together industry leaders, driving new innovation in the market. So briefly, just to recap, the next event in our future video series is our May 5th event for Beyond the Theater, New Windowing Strategies. We hope you can join us for that. And also, for those of you who are interested in more on the OTT topic, streaming video, vMVPDs, and more, check out the Parks Associates OTT Video Market Tracker, looking at market trends and profiles of different OTT services. And it's a quarterly tracker, but there are monthly updates, so we'll keep you up to date on the market. And be sure to reach out to us for all your needs, related to OTT video, pay TV, and all the different subject matter areas that we cover. Some of our great sales staff here, Alyssa Mancini, Jason Paris, and Caitlin will be happy to help you. So be sure to reach out to us for those needs. And remember, up next, we have our networking discussion in a Zoom room covering how will vMVPDs evolve to better serve cord cutters. And maybe we'll get to some of those questions that we didn't get to during our Q&A session. So thanks again for joining us, everyone. And we hope to see you in the Zoom room session. You should see a link there in SwapCard. And thank you again for joining us.
Join Parks Associates for its 4th annual Future of Video, OTT, Pay TV, and Digital Media, a virtual event series taking place across 2021. Our latest consumer data shows 60% of pay TV subscribers are interested in streaming movies and TV shows from an online video service as part of their subscription.
Overall, we leverage our data-driven marketing to double down on performance tactics that are working and to continue to optimize every part of the funnel to ensure we are maximizing overall performance.
Market conditions have also changed the nature of competition in video services.
How do we compete with the trends in the streaming world? And my answer is, don't try to compete.
Consumers are willing to carry multiple video accounts to get the content they want. So in many instances, a service is desired based on how it complements other services in the market.
It'll be interesting to see if anyone can challenge the major device makers, sort of like the current device makers challenge the set-top box.
At the 4th annual Future of Video, we are bringing together industry leaders to share insights on new trends in the video and connected entertainment industries.
The need for the data harness and the way we use data to create those experiences is going to continue to be exponentially important.
We hope you can join us for these upcoming sessions or watch replays of any past sessions.